The slap came wrapped in a smile. On Father's Day, my daughter handed her father-in-law a cruise package worth $13,000. 2 weeks in the Mediterranean, private balcony, champagne sunsets. She paid for it with my money. Then she turned to me, laughed, and tossed a $2 lottery ticket across my dining table like loose change. "Dad," she said, grinning, "if you win, remember, half of it is mine." Everyone laughed. I did too. That's the part that still surprises people. I smiled, I thanked her, I folded the flimsy little ticket and slipped it into my pocket like it meant something. Inside, my chest was on fire. I had spent 40 years working with my hands, grease under my nails, 12-hour days, missed vacations. I buried my wife and raised our daughter alone. Every dollar I saved was deliberate, careful, earned. And now, sitting at my own table, I was being publicly measured against a richer man and found lacking. Her father-in-law got applause. I got a joke. Later that night, after the house emptied and the dishes were done, I opened my bank statement like I always did. Habit, discipline. That's when I saw it. A charge for $13,000. Travel services. My heart didn't race. It sank. She still had access to my account, an emergency safeguard I'd never bothered to remove. She didn't ask. She didn't warn me. She just took it. When I called her, she laughed again. "It's family money," she said. "You wouldn't use it anyway." That was the moment something in me shut off. Not anger, not tears. Something colder, clearer. I revoked her access the next morning. Quietly. No speeches, no threats. Just a phone call and a click. By afternoon, she was screaming at me from a mall parking lot, furious that her card had been declined in front of strangers. That night, she took it public. Posts, videos, tears on command. She told everyone I was greedy, that I was unstable, that I had stolen from her. People who'd known for decades started avoiding eye contact. Whispers followed me down grocery store aisles. I stayed silent. The lottery ticket sat on my kitchen counter, the stupid little joke, bought with stolen money. I crumpled it in my hand and dropped it in the trash. That's where it stayed. 3 days later, I was flipping channels, half listening to the television, when the lottery numbers rolled across the screen. I froze. Something tugged at my memory. I walked to the trash can. I dug through coffee grounds and paper towels like a desperate man, pulled out that ruined scrap of paper, smoothed it flat with shaking hands, and checked the numbers again. Every single one matched. $120 million. I sat down hard in my kitchen chair, staring at the ticket that had been meant to humiliate me. The joke, the insult, the thing she thought was worthless. She said half of it was hers. I didn't smile this time. I wasn't always the quiet old man people now describe as tight with money. Once upon a time, I was just a tired young father trying to keep the lights on. My wife died when our daughter was 9. Cancer. Fast. Ruthless. One year she was helping Kara with spelling homework at the kitchen table. The next, I was standing alone in a hospital hallway, signing papers I didn't fully understand. Grief doesn't come with instructions. It just leaves you holding responsibilities you didn't ask for. From that day forward, there was no backup, no safety net, just me. I worked as an auto mechanic, the kind of job that eats your body one joint at a time. I clocked in before sunrise and often didn't leave until after dark. 12 hours was a good day. 16 wasn't unusual. I missed school plays, missed weekends, missed sleep, but I never missed a bill. When Kara was in high school, I was making about $58,000 a year. Not terrible, not impressive. Enough to survive if you were careful. So I was careful. I drove a used truck. I repaired myself. I bought generic groceries. I skipped vacations. Every spare dollar went into an account labeled simply Kara. College came fast. She wanted to go out of state. Better program, better opportunities. I nodded and said yes before she finished the sentence. Over 4 years, I paid $140,000 in tuition, housing, books, and fees. I didn't complain. I didn't ask for help. I worked Saturdays and took on private repair jobs at night. I remember falling asleep at the kitchen table more than once, grease still on my hands, alarm set for 5 a.m. When she graduated, she hugged me and cried. "I couldn't have done this without you, Dad." I believed that meant something. After college came her first apartment. She didn't have enough for the down payment. I wrote a check for $45,000. Then a car, $31,000, cash. I told her not to worry about paying me back. I told her to focus on building her life. When she got married the first time, I covered the wedding. Modest, $22,000. When that marriage fell apart 2 years later, I helped her move, paid off the remaining lease, started over again. People think generosity looks like grand gestures. For me, it looked like consistency, like showing up every time she needed something, like never saying no. When my accountant suggested I set up an emergency access arrangement on my bank account for her, I agreed without hesitation. "In case something happens to you," he said, "or if she ever needs to help manage things." I trusted her completely. That trust was built on years of sacrifice she never saw. Years where I chose her future over my comfort. Years where I told myself that someday, when she was secure, it would all feel worth it. But something changed when she met Eric. He came from money, real money, the kind that doesn't check price tags. He talked about investments and private schools and country clubs like they were normal milestones. Around him, my world looked small. My house looked outdated. My life looked unimpressive. I started noticing the comments. "You should really update your kitchen, Dad. Why don't you travel more? You don't need all that money just sitting there." She said it casually, like advice, like concern. I brushed it off, told myself it was just exposure to a different lifestyle, that she didn't mean anything by it. I didn't see entitlement. I saw my little girl growing up. That was my mistake. Because by the time Father's Day arrived, she no longer saw my sacrifices as generosity. She saw them as obligation, as something I owed her, something she was entitled to access without permission. 40 years of work, hundreds of thousands of dollars, countless nights of exhaustion, all reduced to family money. And when I finally realized that, when I finally understood how little my sacrifice meant to her, the hurt wasn't loud. It was quiet. It felt like something heavy settling in my chest, something final. The foundation I had built for her life was solid, strong, unshakable. But she was standing on it, looking down at me, and calling it nothing. The change didn't happen all at once. If it had, I might have noticed. I might have said something. I might have protected myself before things went too far. But decay is quiet. It creeps in slowly, disguised as growth. At first, it was small things. Kara stopped calling as often. When she did, the conversations felt rushed, like I was an item on a checklist she wanted to clear quickly. Sunday dinners turned into excuses. Work was busy. Eric had plans. They were traveling. I told myself this was normal. She was building a life. I should be proud. Then came the comments. She started glancing around my house with a polite smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. The furniture I owned for years. The carpet with wear marks I'd never bothered to replace. The kitchen table where I'd eaten thousands of quiet meals alone. "You know," she said once, standing in my living room, "Eric's parents renovated their place last year. Open concept, marble countertops. It really makes a difference." I laughed. "As long as the roof doesn't leak, I'm happy." She didn't laugh back. Another time she mentioned my car. "Dad, you really should upgrade. It doesn't exactly match the image anymore." "What image?" I asked. She hesitated. "You know, ours." Ours. Somewhere along the way, my identity had become an inconvenience. Eric was always polite to my face. Too polite. The kind of courtesy that keeps its distance. He talked about markets and returns and connections, often while glancing at me like he was waiting for me to catch up. When I stayed quiet, he mistook it for ignorance. I didn't correct him. I watched as Kara absorbed his worldview. Money wasn't security anymore. It was status, proof, a scoreboard. She stopped thanking me for help. She started expecting it. When her credit card balance crept up, she didn't ask if I could assist. She told me it would be easier if I just covered it. When they joined a country club they couldn't quite afford, she joked that my savings were just sitting there anyway. Each comment was light, playful, easy to dismiss. So I dismissed them. I told myself I was being sensitive, that I was old-fashioned, that I didn't understand modern life. I didn't want to see the truth, because seeing it meant accepting something unbearable, that my daughter no longer respected me. The entitlement showed itself in moments I replay now with perfect clarity. The way she rolled her eyes when I mentioned budgeting. The way she sighed when I talked about fixing things instead of replacing them. The way she corrected me in front of others, gently but firmly, like a child embarrassed by an aging parent. When I tried to talk to her about it, she brushed it off. "You're overthinking it, Dad. You're being dramatic. Why do you always make everything about money?" The irony didn't escape me. It just hurt too much to confront. I remember one conversation clearly. We were alone in my kitchen. She was scrolling on her phone while I poured coffee. "Eric says you worry too much," she said casually. "He thinks you're afraid to enjoy life." I looked at her. "Enjoy life doesn't mean spending money you didn't earn." She shrugged. "That's a scarcity mindset." Scarcity. As if caution were a character flaw. As if 40 years of discipline were something to be unlearned. That was the moment I realized she no longer saw my choices as wisdom. She saw them as weakness. Still, I stayed silent. Because love makes you compromise your dignity 1 inch at a time. Because fathers are taught that patience is strength and endurance is virtue. Because admitting that your child is becoming someone you don't recognize feels like failure. So when Father's Day arrived, I walked into that dinner already conditioned to accept less. Less gratitude, less respect, less acknowledgement. I smiled through the jokes. I nodded through the comparisons. I told myself that gifts didn't matter. But the truth was already there, staring me in the face. I just hadn't wanted to name it yet. By the time she took money from my account without asking, by the time she laughed and called it family money, the decay was complete. And I was the last one to see it. I didn't confront her right away. When I saw the charge on my bank statement, I sat there for a long time, staring at the screen as if it might change if I looked hard enough. $13,000. Clean, precise, gone. I told myself there had to be a mistake. That was the last lie I told myself about my daughter. When I finally called her, she answered on the third ring, cheerful, distracted. I could hear traffic in the background. She was busy living her life. "Kara," I said, "I'm looking at my account. There's a charge for $13,000. Travel services." There was a pause, then a laugh. Not nervous, not apologetic, amused. "Oh, that," she said. "I bought Eric's Father's Day gift." My stomach tightened. "You took it from my account." "I didn't take it," she corrected. "I used it. There's a difference." "Without asking me." Another pause, this one shorter. Irritated. "Dad, don't make this into something it's not. It's family money." That phrase landed harder than any insult. Family money. As if the years I spent breaking my back were some abstract concept. As if my savings were a shared utility instead of the result of decades of restraint. "That money is mine," I said quietly. She sighed. "You wouldn't have used it anyway." There it was, the sentence that ended everything. I felt something collapse inside me, like a beam snapping under too much weight. Not anger, not shock. Recognition. "You stole from me," I said. Her tone hardened instantly. "Don't be dramatic. Eric has done more for this family than you ever have financially. He helped us buy our house. He pays for Jake's school. He actually provides." I closed my eyes. "And what did I do?" I asked. "You did what fathers are supposed to do," she replied. "Eric went above and beyond." That was the moment. Not when she took the money, not when she laughed at my gift, but when she reduced my entire life to obligation. I ended the call without another word. The next morning, I revoked her access to my account. One phone call, 15 minutes, a click. I didn't announce it. I didn't warn her. I didn't owe her an explanation. By noon, my phone was ringing non-stop. She was furious. Her card had been declined at a department store, in front of people. She screamed that I had humiliated her, that I had embarrassed her, that I was cruel. I listened until she stopped shouting. "You humiliated yourself," I said calmly, "when you took money that wasn't yours." She hung up on me. That night she went online. I watched from a distance as my name was dragged through comment sections and private messages. She cried on camera, told strangers I was unstable, that I was greedy, that I was punishing her out of spite. People believed her. Friends stopped calling. Neighbors avoided eye contact. I became a villain overnight. And still, I said nothing. Because at that point, I understood something she didn't. The betrayal wasn't the money. The betrayal was that she felt entitled to my sacrifice and offended by my boundaries. That kind of thinking doesn't disappear with arguments. It reveals itself through consequences, and consequences were coming. The silence after I cut her access was unlike anything I had experienced before. For the first time in years, there was no request, no demand, no expectation hanging over my head like an unpaid bill. Just quiet. It didn't last. The calls came in waves. Missed calls, voicemails filled with fury, disbelief, and threats disguised as disappointment. When she realized screaming wouldn't move me, she changed tactics. She begged. She cried. She promised to talk things through. That was when I understood something painful and precise. She wasn't sorry for what she had done. She was panicking because the consequences had finally arrived. I didn't answer. Instead, I did something I should have done years ago. I asked for help. Not emotional help, strategic help. I called the bank and requested a full audit of my accounts. Every authorization, every linked access, every quiet permission I had handed out without thinking. When the representative asked why, I didn't dramatize it. Unauthorized withdrawals, I said. The word felt heavy, accurate. Then I called a lawyer. Not a flashy one, not someone who sold justice with confidence and charm. I called a quiet man named Richard Hale, recommended by an old coworker who trusted him with his retirement. Richard listened more than he spoke. He didn't interrupt. He didn't judge. He let me talk until I ran out of words. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and said something that changed everything. "You didn't lose your daughter because of money," he said. "You lost her because she believes she's entitled to it." That sentence hit harder than any insult he'd thrown at me. Richard explained my position calmly. Legally, the money was mine. The access I'd given her was conditional, revocable, and never intended as ownership. The lottery ticket, once given, was a gift. Verbal jokes about sharing meant nothing without written agreement. "You are not in the wrong," he said. "But if she keeps pushing this publicly, you need to be prepared." Prepared, that word mattered. For too long, I had lived reactively, fixing problems after they appeared, cleaning up messes out of love and fear. I had confused patience with weakness. That ended that afternoon. I documented everything: bank statements, dates, messages, screenshots of her social media posts before she could delete or rewrite them. Not for revenge, for clarity, because clarity is power. When she called again that night, I finally answered. She launched into rehearsed emotion, how hurt she was, how confused, how betrayed she felt. I waited until she finished. "You took money without asking," I said. "You justified it. You insulted me. You publicly lied about me. And now you want me to feel guilty." She was silent. "I am not your safety net anymore," I continued, "and I am not your enemy. But if you keep pushing this, I will defend myself." Her voice dropped, cold, calculating. "You think you can just walk away from me?" "I already have," I said. The line went dead. I sat there afterward, surprised by how steady my hands were. There was grief, yes, but underneath it was something stronger. Relief. For the first time since my wife died, I wasn't living my life in service of someone else's expectations. I wasn't apologizing for boundaries. I wasn't negotiating my dignity. I had an ally now. Not someone to fight for me, but someone to remind me of where I stood. And where I stood was solid. The storm hadn't passed, but I finally knew how to stand in it without folding. Silence can be more unsettling than any argument. Once I stopped responding, the noise around me grew louder. Kara didn't back off. She escalated. Every morning I woke up to new messages forwarded by friends who didn't know what to say. Screenshots of posts I hadn't read yet. Comments from people who barely knew me, confident in their judgment. She painted herself as a devoted daughter abandoned by a bitter old man. She talked about emotional abuse, about control, about greed. She framed my boundaries as punishment and my restraint as cruelty. I didn't correct her. That was the trap. Because people who lie expect reaction. They feed on denial, explanation, and emotional defense. When none comes, they keep talking. And the more they talk, the more they reveal. I documented everything: dates, times, words. the evolution of her story as it shifted to fit her needs. One day she claimed I was confused. The next she said I was vindictive, then unstable, then dangerous. None of it matched, and inconsistency leaves fingerprints. Meanwhile, I lived quietly. I went on walks. I fixed small things around the house I ignored for years. I ate simply. I slept deeply. There was a strange calm in knowing I was no longer responsible for managing someone else's emotions. The lottery ticket stayed in the trash. That mattered, because what came next wasn't fueled by greed. It wasn't anticipation. It was indifference. I had already written it off emotionally. It represented humiliation, not hope. 3 days passed. On the fourth evening, I was alone in my living room, half watching television, half listening to my own thoughts. The local news rolled into the lottery segment. I almost changed the channel. Then I heard the numbers. Something in my chest tightened. Not excitement, recognition. I stood up slowly, as if sudden movement might break the moment, walked into the kitchen, looked at the trash can. I hesitated. Then I reached in. I dug past coffee grounds and paper towels until my fingers closed around a familiar crumpled shape. The ticket was stained, creased, almost unrecognizable. I smoothed it out on the counter and checked the numbers. Once, twice, a third time, because disbelief demands repetition. They all matched. Every single one. I sat down hard, the room tilting slightly, like gravity had shifted without warning. The television continued murmuring in the background, unaware that my entire life had just split in two. The irony was almost surgical. The thing meant to belittle me. The joke meant to remind me of my place. The scrap of paper tossed into the trash. It was worth more than everything she had ever taken from me. My phone buzzed. Another message from Kara. Another demand. Another accusation. I didn't open it. For the first time, I truly understood something fundamental. This wasn't about money anymore. This was about control. And the moment she realized she had lost it, the collapse would begin. I folded the ticket carefully and placed it in a drawer, not as a prize, as evidence. Then I turned off the television, washed my hands, and went to bed. I slept better than I had in years. Power changes people, but entitlement reveals them. Once Kara realized I wasn't responding, she stopped pretending to be reasonable. The mask came off completely. What replaced it wasn't sadness or reflection. It was arrogance. She assumed I would fold. She had always assumed that. Her messages shifted tone. The apologies disappeared. The fear was replaced by certainty. She spoke as if the outcome had already been decided, as if resistance was just a temporary inconvenience. "You're embarrassing yourself, Dad. Everyone knows you're wrong. You'll come around once you calm down." She told mutual friends that I was confused and not thinking clearly. She hinted that I needed help managing my affairs, that she was only stepping in because someone had to be responsible. It was impressive how quickly she rewrote the story, and people believed her, because confidence sounds like truth to those who don't look closely. She escalated online, posted smiling photos with captions about resilience and forgiveness, talked about how painful it was to love someone who refused to let go of control. She framed herself as patient, mature, long-suffering. I became a background character in my own life. Behind the scenes, she was planning. I could tell by the way her tone sharpened, by the way she spoke in absolutes. She was certain the lottery ticket would become leverage, certain that money would fix everything the way it always had before. She didn't know the ticket was real yet. She assumed I was bluffing, that I was holding on to it out of spite, that eventually I'd come crawling back, desperate for reconciliation. I watched quietly as she spent money she no longer had. New clothes, expensive dinners, subtle posts about luxury. The performance never stopped, even as the cracks widened. Entitlement has a dangerous blind spot. It convinces people they are immune to consequences. She believed that because she was my daughter, I would always rescue her, because she had always been rescued. I remember the exact moment I realized she felt untouchable. She left a voicemail, voice calm, almost bored. "You can drag this out if you want," she said, "but you're not keeping that ticket. It was bought with my card. My name is on the receipt. I've already talked to people who know how this works." People who know how this works. Not lawyers, not experts, friends. Echo chambers, assumptions. She had built her confidence on noise, not facts. That's what arrogance does. It mistakes volume for truth. Meanwhile, I prepared. Not loudly, not dramatically, quietly. I met with my lawyer again, confirmed every detail: ownership, intent, documentation. I gave him screenshots, voicemails, dates. He didn't smile, but he nodded. "She's overplaying her hand," he said, "and she doesn't realize it." That night I sat alone in my living room, the house lit only by a single lamp. I thought about the years I had spent cushioning her falls, absorbing the impact of her mistakes, making sure she never truly felt loss. I had trained her to believe the ground would always rise to meet her. Now she was stepping forward with confidence, certain of solid footing, and there was nothing there. The collapse wasn't loud yet, but it was inevitable. And when it came, it wouldn't come because I pushed her. It would come because she kept walking forward without looking down. The truth doesn't rush. It waits until there is nowhere left to hide. I didn't tell anyone about the ticket right away. Not my lawyer, not friends, not even myself, not fully. I needed to understand what I was holding before the world tried to take it from me. I drove to the lottery office alone. No dramatic music, no shaking hands. Just a quiet man standing in line behind a couple buying scratch-offs and a teenager cashing in $20. When it was my turn, I slid the ticket across the counter without ceremony. The clerk scanned it once, then again. She looked up at me differently the second time. "I need my supervisor," she said. That was when it became real. They moved me into a private room, asked for identification, asked how I obtained the ticket. I told the truth. A Father's Day gift, bought by my daughter, given to me freely. No hesitation, no confusion. They nodded, took notes, smiled carefully. "Sir," the supervisor said finally, "this ticket is valid. The jackpot is $120 million. I thanked her. That surprised her more than anything else. I walked out of the building into ordinary daylight, feeling exactly the same as I had when I walked in. No rush, no joy, just confirmation. That afternoon, the phone started ringing. Someone had leaked it. The news travels fast when money is involved. Kara called first. This time, her voice wasn't angry. It was sweet, almost trembling. "Dad," she said softly, "I heard something crazy. Tell me it's not true." I let the silence stretch. "You won, didn't you?" she whispered. "Yes," I said. She exhaled sharply, like she'd been holding her breath for days. "Oh, my God! Oh, my God! This is incredible!" Her voice climbed with excitement. "I knew it. I knew something like this would happen. I told everyone that ticket was special." She didn't congratulate me. She claimed it. "We need to talk about how we're handling this," she continued quickly, "because obviously half of it is mine. We said that, you remember?" "No," I replied, "we didn't." Her tone shifted instantly. "Don't do this," she snapped. "Not now. Not after everything. That ticket was bought with my card. It was given to me as a gift," I said calmly. "End of discussion." The line went dead. Within an hour, my phone exploded. Texts, emails, missed calls from unknown numbers. People I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly remembered my name. Then the posts started. She went public again, louder, more dramatic, this time with numbers attached. She accused me of stealing a winning lottery ticket, claimed I had tricked her, claimed she had witnesses, claimed I was abusing my position as a father. The comments multiplied. Some supported her. Others questioned her. The story spread beyond our small circle. Local pages picked it up, then regional ones. A greedy old man, a betrayed daughter, a fortune tearing a family apart. The narrative was irresistible. I didn't respond. Instead, I called my lawyer. He was ready. "This is exactly what we prepared for," he said. "She's making a mistake." The next morning, the Lottery Commission scheduled a public verification ceremony. Cameras, officials, paperwork, transparency. I agreed. If she wanted a stage, she was going to get one. When the day came, I stood behind a podium under bright lights while reporters murmured and adjusted microphones. The oversized check sat behind me like a prop from someone else's life. Then I saw her. Kara pushed through the crowd with Eric close behind her. Her face was tight with determination. Her confidence was back. She thought she was winning. She shouted before anyone could stop her. "That ticket is mine!" We had an agreement. Cameras turned instantly. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't point. I didn't argue. I simply said the truth. The ticket was a gift, given freely, with witnesses present. There was no agreement, no condition. The room went quiet. Someone asked if anyone could verify that. A man stepped forward. Eric's father. He spoke clearly, calmly, without emotion. "I was there," he said. "It was a gift. No agreement was made." That was the moment her confidence cracked. Not because of me, because someone she never expected stood against her. The cameras caught it. The hesitation. The disbelief. The realization that her version of events wasn't holding up. She started shouting again, but the words were scattered now, defensive, desperate. Security moved in. The ceremony continued. The hammer didn't fall loudly. It fell cleanly. And once it did, there was no lifting it back up. Once the cameras stopped rolling, everything fell apart. Not all at once, not dramatically, but completely. Kara's confidence didn't vanish in a scream or a breakdown. It leaked out of her slowly, through frantic phone calls, deleted posts, and messages she sent and unsent before finally giving up. The narrative she had built collapsed under its own weight. People began asking questions she couldn't answer. Why was the ticket given to me? Why were there no written agreements? Why had she already taken money from my account without permission? Inconsistencies surfaced. Screenshots circulated. Her earlier posts contradicted her later ones. Sympathy turned into skepticism. Skepticism turned into silence. Eric was the first to crack. He called me late one night, voice tight, controlled, trying to sound reasonable. "This has gone too far," he said. "We should resolve this privately." Privately meant quietly surrendering without admitting fault. "I agree," I replied. "You should stop." He didn't respond to that. A week later, Kara showed up at my door. She looked smaller somehow. Not physically, internally, like someone who had lost the certainty that once carried her through life. Her eyes were red, her makeup imperfect, her voice unsteady. "I didn't mean for this to happen," she said. "People are being cruel." I stepped aside and let her in. She walked through the house like a stranger, touched the back of a chair, looked at the walls. The same walls she had once judged as outdated and insufficient. "They're saying I'm greedy," she whispered. I nodded. "That's how consequences work." She sat at my kitchen table and cried. Real tears this time. Not curated, not strategic. "They're turning on me," she said. "Eric's business partners are distancing themselves. His parents won't take our calls." I waited. "I just wanted things to be fair," she added. I finally spoke. "You wanted control," I said. "Fairness requires boundaries." She looked up at me, eyes searching for rescue, for reassurance, for the old version of me who would step in and fix everything. "I need help," she said. I believed her, and I still said no, because help without accountability is permission. She tried bargaining next. She offered apologies, promised change, swore she would tell the truth publicly if I shared the money. That was the moment I knew nothing had changed. "You're still negotiating," I said. "You haven't learned anything." Her face hardened. "You're enjoying this," she accused. "You like watching me fall." I shook my head. "I hate that it came to this," I said, "but I won't stop it." She left in silence. Over the next few weeks, the collapse accelerated. The lawsuit she threatened never materialized. Her lawyer quietly withdrew after reviewing the facts. Eric's professional image took damage he couldn't smooth over. Their lifestyle shrank. Expenses they had ignored became unavoidable. The house went up for sale. Social media moved on, as it always does. New scandals replaced old ones. But the people who mattered remembered. So did she. The final call came months later. She didn't ask for money. She asked, "Why? Why wouldn't you save me?" she said. I answered honestly. "Because saving you is what taught you this behavior," I said. She didn't argue. She just hung up. That was the last time we spoke. Peace didn't arrive with fireworks. It came quietly, like sleep after a long illness. A few months after everything ended, I sold my house. Not because I needed the money, but because I needed distance. Too many memories lived in those walls. Too many echoes of who I used to be. I moved to a smaller town a few hours away, somewhere no one knew my name, somewhere I could walk into a diner and be just another man ordering coffee. For the first time in decades, my life was simple again. I bought a modest place with a garage and space to work. I reopened an old dream I shelved years ago. Restoring classic cars. Honest work. Grease under the nails. Engines that responded to patience instead of pressure. I hired a few young guys who reminded me of myself when I was starting out. Good hands, rough edges, no entitlement. I paid them fairly, taught them what I knew. At night, I slept without anxiety. No phone calls, no demands, no fear of being drained by someone who mistook love for obligation. People assume money changes you. It doesn't. It reveals what was already there. What it revealed in me was restraint, boundaries, and the understanding that love without limits isn't kindness, it's surrender. I think about my daughter sometimes, not with anger, with clarity. I wish her well from a distance. I hope she learned something from what happened, but I no longer confuse hope with responsibility. Legacy isn't what you leave behind in dollars. It's what you refuse to tolerate. I left her something more valuable than money, a lesson. And I left myself something too, dignity. Call to action. If you're a parent listening to this story, remember, this sacrifice does not entitle your children to your destruction. Love does not require you to erase yourself, and kindness without boundaries is weakness. Protect your dignity while you still can, because respect, once lost, is almost impossible to buy back.